Can't read that now. Welcome to the August 14th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting of the Canyon Regional Board of Trustees. I'm going to do the roll call right now. Ted Gibbs.
Here.
Martin Poor.
Here.
Gary Gilbert.
Here.
Abigail Maybury. Doug Schnautz. Teresa Scheel.
Here.
Donald Bosworth.
Here.
Regina Frankie. Randy Schwinn. Brandon Rohan.
Here.
Mark Gilbert. Al Suarez.
Here.
Steve Cooper.
Present.
Christina Miller. Steve Fonville.
Here.
There he is. Hi, Stephen. James Forcell.
Here.
Doris Stubing.
Here.
Mabel Vaughn. Clint Ellis.
Here.
10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18 trustees. Wow. Oh. Just a quick reminder before I move forward, it's very important, meetings recorded. This way they can keep good notes for minutes. I ask everybody when you're speaking, make sure you move a microphone over in your general direction so that it gets picked up and it gets recorded well. This makes the minutes much more accurate, helps the ladies when they're trying to figure out who said what and when. Excellent. Next, we're going to do the invocation. Heavenly Father, we come together again to conduct the business of the Canyon Regional Water Authority. We thank you for the many blessings we each enjoy, and we ask that you bless each of us with wisdom, knowledge, compassion as we discuss and deliberate the issues before us. We ask that you watch over us, protect us, and continue to grant us good health, and that you provide us with a safe passage to our homes after this meeting. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
You all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4, public comments. Comments on non-agenda items. No discussion from the board. There is a 3-minute time limit. B, comments on specific items on this agenda. Discussion from and with the board may be allowed. 3-minute time limit per citizen. This may not be shared or ceded to another citizen. Members of the public wishing to make a public comment during this meeting must register by emailing fran@crwa.com prior to the meeting. Written comments may also be submitted. If you wish to speak, please state your name. We have one person wishing to speak at public comments.
Ready? Hi, my name is Humberto Ramos. I wanted to take this time to thank the Board of Canyon Regional for allowing me to serve CRWA in varying capacities for the last 18 years, 6 years as a participant and 12 years as an employee. So thank you, CRWA. As many of you know, I am the new general manager for County Line Sud. I have come before you to ask you to not lose sight of one of the unspoken principles that made this organization successful. That is inclusion of all. I'm glad Converse is here. Inclusion of all board members, all general managers, and all staff of the entities that form CRWA. Let me remind you that no matter how large the entity is, no matter how much water they're contracted for, no voice is louder than the others, and no favoritism should exist. All should be treated equal. All voices matter. Hence the principle of inclusion. Being as that may, I formally request that item 9D be tabled for the simple reason that County Line Sud has not had the opportunity to participate in the discussions. There was a meeting held on August 8th. County Line, along with San Marcos, were not part of that meeting. This action item, which is presented in your board packet today, is the beginning steps to drive an engineered solution to the membrane issue at Hayes Caldwell. The estimation of the construction of the engineered solution is between $8 to $10 million. Of which County Line represents 29.27% of that, which is about $2.4 to $3 million. Therefore, I ask again that this item be tabled. In keeping with the principle of inclusion of all, I further ask that when you go into executive session to address item 10B, you do so with understanding of what the employment contract with John Kaufman states. If you don't have that contract, I ask that you get that contract ASAP. The contract states that the annual evaluation will be conducted by the board of CRWA, not a subset of the board, but the entire board. What has transpired thus far is the evaluation of the executive committee for John Kaufman. Any action regarding an annual evaluation thus far once again excludes County Line and many others of this board. Not only to mention that John Kaufman has a 2-year contract with CRWA, 16 months of that 2-year contract have already been expended without an evaluation from this board. All seated today here have a vested interest in evaluating the general manager. I would be remiss if I did not mention my board member, Tracy Shield, has asked on 3 occasions for an evaluation of the general manager, and she was not heard. Furthermore, I ask that during the evaluation, you include and review all correspondence and actions thus far that address the general manager, such as resolutions by individual entities that have a vote of no confidence, emails of no confidence sent to the general manager, complaints about the general manager, work done by Mr. Donald Bosworth that shows 4 entities have a understanding or an opinion that there's lack of leadership here. I ask that you review emails which show defiance by Mr. Kaufman. I also ask that you remember when Mr. Kaufman was very disrespectful and unprofessional to 2 board members of this board. And finally, I ask that you look at any other correspondence that may be out there with regards to Mr. Kaufman's tenure here at CRWA. This practice of exclusion in place of inclusion, I fear, will continue to divide this organization, degrade our relationships, and ultimately destroy this organization which we all have built. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Moving on. Item 6, consent agenda items. Do I have a motion on consent agenda items?
The motion to approve the minutes from we'll just the consent agenda.
Brandon Rohan, I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item 7, CRWA staff reports. Updates from written reports by staff, legal counsel, and others. Water treatment, storage, transmission operations staff. Mike.
Staff has nothing else to provide at this time other than what's in the report that we provided with the board packet.
Do you have any questions for staff in relation to the report that's in your packet? Hearing none. Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant, production, Paul membrane filtration, engineering design services contract, PFAS test results. Staff, any updates on that?
Nothing to add at this time. All we know is that TCEQ will be collecting water samples here at Lake Dunlap this month in August.
Any questions for staff related to this item? Yes, sir.
Reading the report, it shows that the PFAS limits exceeded the standard. What is the plan to either get those back into the required limits or to answer the potential repercussions?
I think you were referencing a sample of water taken at the Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant. Is that correct?
The report
Yeah.
that's in our packet.
Though there are no standards for those 2 parameters, there are listed PFAS parameters for which will be regulated. We're not being regulated on those 2 items yet. So it's only for sampling and reporting at this point.
But John, it could become an issue in the future.
Yes, it could become an issue in the future. That's correct. And one of the ways of treating PFAS constituents is nanofiltration and the use of ozone and a catalyst.
Okay, I appreciate your answer, but in the report, it specifically states Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant, TCEQ, found the presence of 2 out of 29 toxic PFAS chemicals in concentration slightly exceeding the reporting limit. So there is no requirement, it's just a report.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to this report?
Mr. Kaufman, on the PFAS again, has TCEQ started the rulemaking process on that?
Yes, there are proposed rules and regulations right now that have not yet taken effect for the monitoring and eventual treatment for PFAS in the water. Most of the PFAS that we get in the water here on the Guadalupe River as well as the San Marcos River generally comes as wastewater discharges from upstream.
And on the proposed rules, are they proposing at this point treatment or just monitoring? Do you know that?
Partly it's monitoring, but there are a few of the constituents which have been considered to be hazardous, and there will be requirements in the future for treatment to remove the PFAS. I think the goal is to see no PFAS, certain constituents present, but right now they're proposing an MCL.
Thank you, sir.
And John, were the samples raw or post-treatment?
My understanding is that they were post-treatment.
Any further questions on this one? Obviously, TCEQ is working on this, and at some point in time, they'll probably come out with a regulation. It'll go through the whole process, and then it'll become a standard that we'll have to meet somewhere in the future. It's just how soon that happens and how long it takes for them to work through that. Some of these standards takes literally years for them to come up, go through the whole process with public hearings and all the other things necessary, and there'll be a lot of testimony in these. It's also the how to get it out of there and what the cost is, and there's a lot of different parts to this. Saying that something needs to come out is one thing. They also need to understand that most places, if it's there, to get it out will require extensive and expensive changes to their treatment process. And when that happens, everybody be looking to the Texas Water Development Board or some other type of funding agency to fund these changes. So I think as part of that process, they normally take the time to understand what the impact is to the people providing this and determine a path forward. It's not like an instant on switch where today we're reporting it, next week they come in and say, we're in violation of that. And then you have to do something tomorrow.
I appreciate your explanation. My day job is in the food business, and that is what they required of us. You remove it immediately.
Yeah.
There wasn't any time frame, so my assumption would be the same here. When PFAS was caught in water, I would assume they would make us remove it immediately.
Yeah, here, because we're working on such large volumes and the cost is so high that it's not an instantaneous response at this level. Very similar to when they started the copper and lead process and they started working through that whole process there. It wasn't, they said, first you're going to test, then we're going to figure out what the limits are, then we'll establish the limits, then we're going to give a plan on how you're going to lower if you have lead in your system, how you're going to lower those things and what it takes to do that. So it wasn't like tomorrow you got to have all the lead out, because it's not quite that simple when you're talking about the volumes we're talking about here. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for the question. Any other questions? Moving on to the next item. Next report is Wells Ranch 3 project. Oh, excuse me. I skipped one. Wells Ranch treatment, production, rehabilitation, and pump repairs. Any report from staff?
We have nothing to add to the report that we provided in writing.
Okay, thank you. Wells Ranch 3 project, draft water supply and treatment contract, groundwater leasing and permitting. Any updates, John?
Not at this time. We did attend a workshop with Gonzales County last week. I think it went reasonably well, all things considered. We expect next month that we will begin the hearing process on our application to increase production out of well number 14 by I think it's 920 acre feet a year.
Any questions on Wells Rent 3 project at this time? Hearing none. Item C, South Texas Regional Water Planning Group, Region L. Any report from staff that isn't included in the packet?
No, everything we have is in the packet. And I think the last Region L meeting was attended by Brandon Rohan. Thank you, Brendan, for your notes.
Any questions on Region L? D, groundwater districts of Guadalupe and Gonzales County, referring to staff again.
I've already commented about the meeting we had with Gonzales County. I also attended a meeting last week with Guadalupe County, and we gave them a brief status report of what we're doing. Nothing else to provide.
Any questions on E, or excuse me, D, groundwater districts? Hearing none. Legal and legislative matters. I'll go with Trey first.
The items that I have are covered in agenda item 10A. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
I'm quite sure we're going to go over them in depth in 10A. Rosenberg, you have anything you need to add today?
No, I don't. I'm in with it.
Any question for our legal team? Hearing none. Budget Committee, comments and updates on the draft FY 2024 budget. Committee Chairwoman is not present. Is anybody else from that committee ready to give an update?
Don't have a full update. We have met twice. Excuse me.
Can you
We will be
speak?
meeting, again on the 20.
Thank you.
We will be meeting again on the 21st, which hopefully we can get everything wrapped up on that, in that meeting. And then we have an item on 9B that will be up for discussion and possible ratification. All I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Finance Committee? All right. Policy and Legislative Committee.
Policy and Legislative Committee, we've been meeting every other week. The bylaws have been completed. We'll have an update on that and later in the meeting. And then the personnel policy is currently underway. We're getting pretty close on that one. I think we've got maybe 10 pages left to do. We meet tomorrow. Hopefully we can wrap that up. Our intention there is to have that formatted before we send it out to everybody to look at, because it's been through so many hands. It's pretty cattywampus right now. So we're gonna get it cleaned up and ready. All I have for the bylaws committee, for the policy and legislative.
Any questions for the Policy and Legislative Committee?
In our bylaws, I had requested that. And be duties part. I would like to see us address that.
We'll talk more on that whenever we get down to the bylaws section.
Mr. Gibbs said that he's going to come up. Mr. Gibbs is going to speak about it here coming up shortly when he talks about the bylaws.
Our PA system is. I have repeatedly asked that we get a new one.
Trey, would you handle her?
Understood. Any other questions for Policy and Legislative Committee? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to the Construction Committee and reports on matters related to CRWA construction infrastructure. I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President, Brandon Rohan.
And I'll just run through a quick couple of topics. A lot of them are very similar. We've got 3 tech stop projects going on: FM 1518, the Santa Clara and Zool project, and FM 621. On 1518, we can expect we're hoping for a September recommendation for a bid. On the Santa Clara line, we believe construction is going to start next month. And on 621, most of our construction is complete. There's still some crystal clear sud installation that's going on and some tie-ins that have to occur. On the GIS system, staff member who is working on the GIS data acquisition here at Canyon Regional has been moved into a new role. UEG is working on pricing and looking at how we may solve coming up with the rest of the data acquisition. I'll say that the construction committee had concerns when we moved forward with the GIS system on the burden it would put on staff rather than using a consultant of some sort to do the work. It looks like it has become a burden on staff, and so we're going to try and evaluate another option. UEG continues to work on the standards and specifications. That approximate schedule was 12 weeks. I think we may be 3 weeks into that 12-week schedule. We did receive the statements of qualifications for engineering services here at Lake Dunlap. We received a number of large firms who've responded to the RFQ. I was pleased to see the results. I'm not sure when the selection committee meets. It looks like it was Ardura, Garver, Black & Veatch, STV, HDR, and I believe this is Inprotect, Hibbs, and Todd. Those were the 6 responses we received. At Hayes Caldwell, the Paul unit's been working better over the last week, at least at the time of our meeting, the week prior to our meeting. We did have some concerns about whether the trailer is actually producing the amount of water we expected. I think we all had hopes that would be a little bit closer to 2 million, and the number is somewhere between 1 and 1.5. It did also take quite a bit of time to get the trailer up and running regularly. We are now in August, and I believe that trailer was implemented in the late spring. So we're kind of looking to see if maybe some of those costs are recoverable. Ardura reported a revised opinion of probable cost for the Hayes Caldwell project on the interior, and that revised OPC came closer to $27 million for a project that continues to escalate in price. So we're monitoring that. I think it may benefit the group, the Hayes Caldwell group, to get together and reevaluate that project and see if there are any potential things that can be eliminated to bring that cost back into a more reasonable number. And then Ardura is working on a scope for replacing the membranes at Hayes Caldwell. They were selected by the selection committee to do the work. The scope has not been finalized. The coke membranes right now that are there at the plant, they need regular pinning, and they're approximately 4 years old. Fortunately, we haven't seen any additional module failures that we were seeing earlier on in this year. So that's a good sign, but we will have to find a replacement for those membranes at some point. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Vice President Rohan? We'll go through real quickly and we'll ask our consultants. Alliance Regional. I don't see Graham here tonight. Okay. We'll skip right over that one. GIS, UEG, David Kneiper. Any questions for David Kneiper? Hearing none, David, don't sit down. CRWA IH10, Santa Clara and Zool Pipeline Encasement Project. Any questions on that project at this time? CRWA FM 1518 transmission line project. Again, David. Any questions in relation to that project? Next one, CRWA standards and specifications. Again, David Kneiper. Any questions on CRWA standards and specifications? Hearing none. TxDOT, Hayes County, crystal clear. CRWA FM 621, CR 266, waterline relocation. I know Brandon's already covered that. Anything additional from staff? Any questions on that project? Glad to see that project coming to an end. That was a mess. Wells Ranch 3, water treatment plant optimization and conceptual. I'll go back to that one in a minute. Pipeline designs, tri-hydro. Any questions in relation to Wells Ranch 3 water treatment plant and the rest of it? I'll never say it again twice, right? Next one, CRWA master plan update, staff. Anything to add to that?
Question. That on pretty much the same status for the last 2 or 3 meetings. Full status on where we are with that, when it's gonna be.
David, I'll defer to you to that because we had a meeting about it and gave you a bunch of comments. What's your answer on that one?
Appreciate those kind of statuses being in your status report so we know what's going on.
Ted, one of the bits of information we asked them to include was the water usage information from last year, which was the highest usage year on record.
Thank you.
So just so it's on the record, David Robago from Tri-House stated that they anticipate having the comments that were sent to them addressed in the plan, and they would have the plan sent back to us for review by the Board of Trustees by the end of the month. Are welcome. Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Facility improvements, membrane filter replacement, staff, any update?
Nothing to add that we met last Wednesday with a few members of the selection committee to review it internally on a preliminary basis, the scope of work that was presented to us from Ardura. And we had a lively, helpful discussion on that. No decisions were made. And we'll have more meetings coming up, but there is an agenda item later under item 9 to begin the process of data review and analysis.
Thank you very much. And the last bullet point up there, exterior to filter building status report on approvals, funding and construction, Ardura, and I believe we have Byron Sandifer here tonight. You have any questions for Ardura in relationship to that specific item? Mr. Forcell, can we use? That helps us.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question is, are there any pending grants to help with the funding of that project?
Mr. Forcell, if agenda item 9E addresses, I think, your question.
Yeah, Mr. Forcell, an application had already put in that TDM is reviewing. Staff and consultants met with TDM on site. And while they were going through the project, they took a look at the existing application, and their suggestion was that it would be split out so that pieces of that application could be approved. It looks like a lot of the projects that are still receiving funding are generator projects. We expected that funding, we would have known about it in January, and here we are in August now. And so what it looks like is happening is there were so many generator projects that they're taking the place of any other project. And so one of the recommendations was split it up into a couple different pieces. That way, maybe at least a generator part starts moving forward quicker, or another part might get moving forward quicker. But we can talk about that more again later on.
Any other questions related to the Hayes Caldwell water treatment plant facility improvements? Hearing none, we're going to move on to item 9, general business. 9A, discussion concerning proposed revisions to the Canyon Regional Water Authority bylaws. This is not an action item, discussion only. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to apologize to the Board of Trustees. We skipped a step in getting it up for the approval tonight. The step we skipped is, according to the bylaws, the CRWA secretary must send in written form to all of the Board of Trustee members copy of the document and the fact that we will be on the meeting agenda for the vote. We failed to do that step, so I apologize for that missed opportunity. We did send it out 30 days ago to everybody via email. I don't think that qualifies us for a written response. So we're going to go back and do it right to make sure we do it right the third time, fourth time. Going back a little bit of history, we started reviewing the bylaws in March this past year. We've gone through 6 different iterations in these meetings. There have been 3 specific reviews on the treasurer's roles, responsibilities, and duties. We have prepped this 3 times for the Board of Review, for the Board of Trustees review, and it's been pulled for various reasons, 2 of them being because of this particular question. In our last meeting, we talked about this particular issue in great detail. We made a couple of minor changes, and it was the board's opinion that the changes were okay and that we would bring it to the Board of Trustees for the vote. Unfortunately, we did skip that one step, so we're gonna go back and do that. I do not plan on bringing this back to the agenda for the committee. My plan is for the city, wrong group.
Been a
For
while.
the CRWA secretary to send notice to all the Board of Trustees with a copy of the document post haste. That'll give us more than 7 days notice. Everybody will have the opportunity to review it. I request any changes at the next meeting. It will be on the agenda for the review and vote. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments referring to proposed revisions to the CRWA bylaws? We'll entertain those now. Yes, ma'am.
Tracy Shield for the record. So in regards to the evaluation of the general manager, has any change been made to that is it still in the bylaws as the executive committee makes, does the evaluation?
Evaluation is that
Okay, so it's gonna be taken out of the bylaws and put into the personnel?
process for how it will be done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any-
I have a question. This is Martin Poor. So we all received an email telling us that this was the cut, highlighted the differences, and that it would be on this meeting's agenda for discussion and action.
Yes, sir.
What about that didn't qualify? Because I believe that was sent out by the CRWA secretary.
No,
It was not? Who?
it was sent out by a staff member of CRWA.
By a staff member, but it was not okay.
Not by. Doris
Understood.
Goodman.
Okay.
So it has to actually be
Yeah,
a letter
I get
from
it.
Doris. We figured that out.
Okay.
Like for us to review the treasurer's duties, and I had asked Trey to come up and help me with language to better specify the duties of the treasurer in setting water rates, et cetera.
Okay. Any other questions related to discussion concerning proposed revision to CRWA bylaws? Again, this is not an action item tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. B, CRWA 23-08-046, concerning CRWA contribution to employee spouse and dependent health insurance costs. This is adopting a resolution, approval of CRWA contribution of 50% towards the cost of employee spouse and dependent health care insurance costs in FY 2024. And who's going to lead that conversation?
I've asked Joan to come on up and assist with this discussion. Come on up, Joan. Yeah, I can explain. This is an item on the agenda because our enrollment period starts tomorrow, and it's very rapid, and it comes much sooner than when the budget will be approved. And so we need a decision by the board this evening to give us direction on how to proceed on this particular matter. And to give you the background on this, I've asked Joan to come on up and talk a bit about what the situation is and where we're at. Thank you.
One of the things that we've encountered here at CRWA, and this has been discussed at our last 2 budget committee meetings, the employee health insurance that we currently have with TML Health, the rates for our current plan raised 49%, which that's there, we have no control over that. We could have changed plans. The coverage then would have dropped tremendously for our employees. One of the reasons for that, I'm sure a lot of you know, insurance rates in general have gone up, but we also had a very high claims. And what I was told by the insurance company is you should have like 85% of your premiums can go towards claims. We actually had a few months where we had to 12 to 1300% in medical claims. And that's no one's fault. It's just something that happened. And so TML's come back and said, okay, to maintain the plan that you have, it's a 49% increase in your rates. What that would do is for some of our employees, and right now we only have, I think 6 or 7 employees that actually have dependent coverage. But for someone that insures their family, it will increase it to over $2,000 a month. And it's different depending upon if you just insure your spouse, if you just insure your dependent children or your family and their various rates. And what I've asked to do on this is to help maintain our employees and help them just in costs in general is to reimburse the cost to them of 50% of that dependent premium. We do not, currently Canyon Regional does not pay for any of that for dependent cost. All we pay for is the employees. So it's not going to be the same for everyone, and it's not going to be that every employee is going to have dependent coverage. Like I said, currently, I believe we have 6 or 7 employees that actually have dependent coverage. And there has been discussion, possibly lowering our plan. But even by lowering our plan with a higher deductible, less benefits, that rate is still going up 30%. And currently we're having a hard time maintaining employees, keeping them, and we have some good employees and I would like to keep them. And I'm sure that the rest of the CRWA staff would agree with me. We have some employees that have been here a long time, and to tell them that their dependent coverage is going up $700 or $800 a month, that's a lot. And so based upon, and this is just an estimate because I do not know if we would have employees that would decide to go with this, if CRWA helped pay for some of this cost. But based upon our current budget, we've got a couple of new positions that we're going to add, that it would cost Canyon Regional in the upcoming fiscal year 2024 budget $127,000. And that's estimating 11 employees. We're currently, I only have 6 or 7, I believe, that actually have dependent coverage. And my thought on this is these rates, because of the tremendous jump, it is not any of our employees' fault that this has happened. It's just something that did occur.
Yes, ma'am. Quick question for you. So estimated $127,000. This is something that we would need to approve before we approve the budget for the next year. Is this going to be any issue for CRWA to absorb into next year's budget from what you've seen so far?
Nobody has said anything about it. I mean, the rates have been a discussion. And one of the big deals that we did discuss was, our insurance broker going out and trying to get us covered someplace else. There was not an insurance company that would give us rates because of the high claims that we have. And these numbers have been discussed. They're included in my current budget or for fiscal year 2024. We've talked about it.
If we're in a position to absorb this as an entity, I think we need to make sure that we're competitive with the folks we're trying to keep our employees from and steal employees from. I think that this will make us a more competitive employer. I think we are understaffed, and I think this will help attract and retain talent. This has my support. I think it's a great idea.
Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, or Randy, I think the budget committee had planned on maybe moving this forward. The reason why it's not coming in the budget packet is because of the issues with the employees. If we waited till September, we wouldn't be able to tell the employees whether we were doing it or not.
That's
And
correct.
so they wouldn't be able to sign up for it because it'd be past their open enrollment.
Timing issue.
Yes, it's a big timing issue. Our open enrollment by paper actually ends August the 25th, which our budget won't be approved by then. And, you know, we need to let our employees know. We might have employees, if this isn't approved, say, I can't afford to insure my dependents anymore. And so we actually have an open enrollment meeting on Wednesday to let them know what's going to happen.
I would ask each of you to think about the employees where you work and what their reaction would be to getting hit with $2,000 a month additional insurance premiums. What would probably happen? Probably wouldn't stick around, or they would try going without insurance, which is even probably more disastrous.
I'll make a motion that we approve CRWA ordinance 2308-046 concerning CRWA contribution to employee, spouse, and dependent health insurance costs.
I have a motion by Martin Poor, second by Randy Schwinn. Before we take the votes, are there any other questions or comments before we move forward? Yes, Ms. Shield.
I'm having a hard time with this. I'm going to be very honest. Have we looked around to see, with our competitors, do they offer anything like this to their employees? Number one. Number two, as an employer myself, I can't afford to do something like that, you know? I just, not very many companies give that kind of a benefit. And I'm having a hard time with that. Now, don't get me wrong. I love our employees. I want to keep our employees. Have we? I mean, I am having a very hard time with this. This is a very big bite in my head. But again, to my first question, have we looked to see if anybody else?
We do have some other entities that provide dependent pay for some of their coverage.
I was going to say, nope, I was just going to say, so the city of Cibolo for the last 2 years has basically, because of the substantial spike in the increase of dependent care and spousal care, has covered a large part of that cost. This coming year, because of the substantial increase in the cost of insurance, the city's actually going to change methodology. It's something that we can't do here in Canyon Regional this year because there isn't enough time to pull it off. And that is, we're going to move everybody to a very high deductible plan, $5,000 or $6,000. And then the city's going to open up a health savings account for each of the employees in the amount of $2,500 to offset that cost. When the city did the math, it was actually cheaper to put $2,500 in an account for 190 employees than it was to pay the increase that we were going to get hit on the insurance by 50%.
Yeah.
Our cost, our insurance rates were going to go up over $1 million for just short of 200 employees. And they were able to reduce that substantially by basically going with this program and just using a health savings account. That's something that Canyon Regional should look at. But I have to tell you, when you've got a small sample like we have here, I believe we have 17 FTEs.
We have 17 employees.
17 full-time employees. The sample is so small that it's very difficult for an insurance company to recoup anything when you have high claims. And
Believe me, yeah, as you can see, I'm in the healthcare field, so I understand insurance companies and their thought process. But which is very much milking everybody and anybody. But my other, I know you said of the 17, we have 7 that have dependent coverage.
Currently, yes.
I'm not even gonna go with that fight, but okay, I understand what you're saying. But yes, I think we need to look at maybe, saying that for this year, that's fine. But we need to look at alternative
I
options.
agree with you.
I know.
100%.
I'm just saying that, I know we're on a time crunch right now, but, other alternative options, I think is a much better idea because, the other thing is that employee that doesn't have dependent care, they're looking at it going, they're getting a better, getting more benefit than I am too, in the overall scheme of benefits. Okay, so I'm gonna,
One team, one fight.
I'd like to chime in on that. My job as mayor of Lavernia is a volunteer job, and my paying job always gets in the way of my volunteer job. But every place I've ever worked has paid a portion of the dependent benefits. And the first time I saw that, no, every place I've worked, not every place on the planet, every place I've ever worked.
I know.
First time I saw that someone with complete family coverage was getting more compensation, if you will, than I was with just a spouse or just myself, it was rather disturbing. But as I got involved in this and I see the realities of it and what the true costs are to the employees, and that employers do make that effort to go out there and try to offset that and help their employees. Once I had an understanding of it as an employee, I was able to accept it. That's just my personal take on insurance.
Thank you. Have any more comments? I know Brandon, you want to say something?
Yeah, East Central pays 75% of their dependent coverage.
I just want to, the open enrollment seems kind of a oddball type frame. If you're looking at your budget, trying to balance the budget and approve the budget and then have open enrollment prior to, is there a process to move the open enrollment date back so that it would coincide with the ability to approve a balanced budget for CRWA, and that would be included?
That's a possibility, but currently our plan runs from October through September.
Right.
So that's the reason for the urgency in getting the open enrollment done now.
Right.
That our plan runs the same way, and our open enrollment actually starts next week as well. And I think that's when it has to happen so many days before the new year takes effect. I don't know whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever that number is. That's how ours is set up as well. So I'm assuming it's a timing thing based on your coverage year. Whenever your coverage starts, so many weeks before that, you've got to have an open enrollment period. Everybody who's already working there gets an opportunity to pick what services they're going to take, and then that's it. Only new employees get to jump in after that period of time.
So as a board, we can anticipate this coming back to the board next year earlier, have earlier discussions to ensure that the employees have a competitive health plan.
I think that's absolutely the case here. Is they did ask the broker that represents CRWA to try and find some other type of coverage that would provide coverage for our employees that was reasonable. Basically, we couldn't get anybody even to look at this organization in its current status. Puts us in an extraordinarily bad position.
Right, fair enough.
Thank you. Any other questions on that?
Quick question,
Mayor.
as far as city contract, just for clarification, I hear 17, I hear 7, and this resolution only covers 11 employees the way it's written.
Because currently we only have, I don't remember if it's 6 or 7 employees that actually have dependent coverage. So I'm kind of guesstimating that we could have 11, just because I know of some employees that are out there that don't have coverage, and maybe they'll opt to take it if it doesn't cost them so much.
And if they don't take it, then the number would stay at its current number and the cost would go down based on how employees take advantage of this situation.
I just want to add that being the mayor for 16 and a half years in Commerce, dealing with these issues, if you can do it, why not? I mean, it does, you attract the good employees, they know that you're taking care of them, and you'll see a lot of results.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments before we take a vote?
Just real quick, I wanted to thank the, whoever wrote the amendment for placing, the caveat at the end: for future fiscal years, CRWA will examine other options to address increased health insurance costs. So formalizing that requirement to make sure and be examining, all of the expenses regarding health insurance, I appreciate that.
That was actually covered in the budget meeting that was held, and it was important that that was put in here, that everybody understood this was a one-time type of situation, and that CRWA staff and our broker was going to work on a resolution for long-term health care that didn't have this type of a hook at the end of it. Any other questions before we take a vote? Hearing no questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous vote. Thank you very much. I'm sure the employees here will also appreciate that. Item C, CRWA. Resolution number 23-08047 concerning engineering design services for the County Line Special Utility District Transmission Line. Adopting resolution 23-08047, approval of an engineering service order with Gallegos Engineering Incorporated for the alignment, determination, and related services concerning a proposed transmission line to the County Line SUD point of delivery at a cost not to exceed $25,000. And I'll open it up for discussion.
The construction committee met on this topic, and ultimately, we decided not to make a recommendation forward to the full board because we didn't have a funding mechanism for it. County Line currently gets their water through a wheeling agreement through Maxwell's service area. An agreement that's shortly coming to an end as Maxwell's opted to take their additional capacity in the pipeline and give us a 1-year notice. So this topic is time sensitive to move forward as quickly as we can, but we also need to have the tough discussion on how it gets paid for. We heard public comment about 9D. I didn't hear anything about 9C, so I'd ask County Line how they'd like to proceed with this topic. Typically, as the public comment had mentioned, historically, the entities involved in these projects, they usually provided us their feedback, and typically as a full board, we kind of went in their direction. Although all 22 of us are ultimately responsible for Canyon Regional, we also want to make sure that, a majority of us aren't forcing our will on someone who's participating in a project like the Hayes Caldwell project. So I'd ask County Line how they'd like to proceed with this item, if they want to table it, hold off.
We'd like to just proceed.
Okay,
That was Tracy Shield for the record.
thank you.
Like for this to proceed, is that what I heard?
So this isn't the full scope. This is looking at the alignment for now. The full scope, I apologize, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I believe it was close to 350,000 to actually design the pipeline in that. So staff still needs to have a discussion with the Hayes Caldwell Group on how this gets funded and who pays for it, because that's still very important for us.
Problem. Any comments or questions from anyone else on the Board of Trustees? If there are no comments or questions, we are more than willing to accept motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 9C.
Second.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we take a vote?
Instead of just saying 9C, motion specifically pertains to for the record.
Okay,
If you would,
I
please.
tried that.
I'm sorry to make you do that. Let's have a clear record.
I was trying to do that.
I think that's a good reason.
All right, I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution 23-08-047, approval of an engineering service order with Gallegos Engineering, Inc. for alignment, determination, and related services concerning a proposed transmission line to the County Line SUD point of delivery at a cost not to exceed $25,000.
Donald, do I get a second again?
Yes, sir.
Additionally, in there, Sheila, on here, if you look on this page, it says, be it further resolved that the expense funds for this project will be reimbursed to Canyon Regional Water Authority through a reimbursement resolution.
Yes.
We're still good?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have a motion and a second. Any further comment before we take a vote? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Yes,
You're opposed?
I'm opposed to it, yes. Without a funding option, I couldn't approve it.
That's why in the resolution, it said it'd be for a reimbursement resolution. So it normally comes from funding source when we apply for a loan or a bond.
It ain't done.
That's why you do the refunding resolution. I understand. Item D, CRWA 23-08048. Adopt a resolution 23-08048. Your glasses, approval of an approval of an engineering service order for Ardora for initial design services pertaining to the Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant nanofiltration improvement project at a cost not to exceed $25,000. I'll open it up to the floor. Brandon?
We also had this on the construction committee. We did not move forward with this item, not for any specific reason other than it wasn't complete and we didn't have a service order for it. But I have similar comments on this one as I did 9C. I'd ask that the entities that are participating in this let us know their thoughts and how they'd like to move forward with it, whether it's in the limited scope or if it's in the full scope or if it's just pushed off for another meeting. Another time-sensitive topic, as I reported earlier, the membranes at the plant currently are 4 years old. They were experiencing failures early on. We do have the Paul Mobile membrane trailer, which is just a rental trailer in place. So another time-sensitive project.
Open it up to the floor. Anyone have any comments? Anyone from Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant Group wish to comment on this item?
Yes, so the nanofiltration improvement, what's the process there? What's the scope of that work? We have a temporary trailer parked there at a certain cost. The nanofiltration project, is this part of the overall construction? Or is this, are we trying to make the trailer work better? Or are our membranes work better?
The latter, the membranes themselves. So all the other work being done that I spoke on earlier, the $27 million, does not include any work on the membranes. So late last year, early this year, late the year prior to this, we started discussing failures and pinning issues with the Coke membrane, and they were failing prematurely. I think at that point, they were only about 1.5 to 2 years old, and so we weren't expecting to see that failure. We're looking for the full solution, which is either, it's complete replacement of some sort.
Mr. Forcell, the document that's attached behind the board resolution on this is this proposed scope of services. We haven't finalized this yet. We need to continue to meet and discuss this internally as well as with the consultant. But we thought in the interest of time and expediency, most projects like this begin with data collection and review. And we thought that this would be appropriate in this case to get the ball rolling on this project in terms of data submission to the consultant and let them start reviewing it.
Well, I didn't receive this package till noon today or something. I'm trying to go through this stuff, but it's kind of I'm cramming for a test for this.
Didn't receive, or you didn't get your email till today?
Correct.
Okay.
Interesting. Oh, well,
Anyway, I evidently the answer's in here.
Yes, sir.
no, it's okay. And the scope of services is proposed. It's not by any means finalized. We've only had a chance to review it internally a little bit ourselves. So that's still subject, but we felt that we could get the ball rolling just with something basic.
I think everybody's aware that in multiple meetings over the last year, the members of the Hayes Caldwell treatment plant have been very concerned about the output of their plant, the capacity to continue to produce water, and the failure rate that we were experiencing on the membranes. I think it was just for expedience sakes to get something started, so we're not sitting and waiting another 30 days to do something. If it's not the will of the members of the Hayes Caldwell treatment plant to move forward, just tell us, and we will, Canyon Regional will not move forward. It's a call on the users at this point in time.
That the scope might exceed 20.
Not if that's what's in here.
Mr. Rohan, with the previous agenda item, you explained the difference between the limited scope on the table and the ultimate full scope. Can you do the same with this item, especially since the agenda item packet has a 15-page scope, and that's obviously we're not going to get that for $25,000.
I wish I could help you, but I did not have anything to do with that part of the scope, so I can't explain the scope. Staff will have to do that.
Okay, Mr. Coffey.
We haven't finalized the cost for this yet by any stretch of the imagination. But I think we're looking at a cost range between $800 to $101.2 million for engineering services.
So this scope is just to get started on working on something, so something is happening. We're not sitting around waiting. Again, this is, the users of this plant need to tell us what they want to do. If they want to wait, we'll wait. If you want to start at least gathering data and have something in the works so you know where we're going, it's up to the users of Hague Caldwell Treatment Plant. Time is of the essence. I've heard that I don't know how many times over the last year. We're all frightened about what could go wrong. I don't know if doing nothing is the right answer, but I'd like to hear from the Board of Trustees first.
I'm finished. That's fine. No, I'd, without further delays on this project, I'd fall up the field on that project. That's fine.
Dubing or Ms. Vaughn, do you have any comments?
I would clarify on the scope. The scope that you're looking at only takes us through preliminary design. The cost I just quoted you was not the preliminary design cost. It's kind of everything. But with an anticipation that the overall project cost is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million. So the scope that you're looking at is just through the preliminary design phase, which is a major decision point as to what direction we go from there.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve CRWA ordinance, or I'm sorry, resolution 2308-048 concerning design services, specifically initial design for the Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant Nanofiltration Improvement Project. This is Martin Poor for the
I have a
record.
motion for Martin Poor. Do I have a second?
James Forcell, second.
Okay, and I want to make sure we read this again because there's a language in here. So just be it further resolved, expensed funds for this project will be reimbursed to Canyon Regional Water Authority through a reimbursement resolution. Again, reimbursement resolutions are done so that in the future, when a major project moves forward, that major project can bring that money back to CRWA in its totality, and you don't have to worry about that. You know, basically, you'll pay for that as a big loan whenever that works. This is just advancing the money so that something's happening now, so you have something going on. I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any other comments before we take a vote?
Could be. I'd like to hear from County Line and if Maxwell has any comments before I make a vote.
County Line, Tracy Shield for the record, I'm going to defer my comments to my general manager.
So I've heard words about urgency. I've heard words that importance. But the reality is really isn't no urgency at this time. I don't see how taking action today is going to cause failure or us any more delay than what's occurred right now. We currently have a palm membrane filter that's been used for or been in operation for 6 months and has not produced the water that we've needed thus far. All I've asked is for inclusion. I appreciate that Lavernia had made the motion for this topic. But again, I think what's at hand is the Hayes Caldwell entities with regards to what's happening here. Not to forget the fact that City of San Marcos is part of this project and they weren't even consulted on this. And you heard the general manager state this is the beginning of a task order or of a project that's going to be between $10 to $12 million. I think if we have time and we sit and we talk about the scope and provide comment to the scope. I'm not sure if Martindale was even part of that meeting. My understanding, the only ones part of that meeting were Maxwell. And the general manager at Maxwell concluded and sent an email to Mr. Kaufman that he advised that this item be tabled. But Mr. Kaufman did not inform you of that. So tabling is not going to cause any more of a hurt, a delay. It is what it is right now. We have a membrane system that is, paying for a palm membrane that's $480,000 a year. $480,000 a year. And it's not working the way we said it was going to work. All I asked for is some time for entities, myself included, County Line and Maxwell, to look at this and see if there's any corrections or additions we can make with regards to this. I had corrections and additions to this, which I was never given the opportunity to. And again, you're asking, I appreciate Mr. Poor motioning it, but you're asking County Line to pay 29.275% of this, which is anywhere from $2 to $3 million at the end, I think we should have a say. And I don't see no hurt with putting this off for another meeting. Again, there is not an urgency. And I would take that back as far as urgency. These filters have been failing. We have a system in place, the PAW filters, that should be working. The failure is the PAW system's not working. Instead of us moving forward without, again, inclusion of our position and our point, which I feel is valuable here for this effort. We want to say at the table, we want to say how the money is going to be spent. We want to say how this derives and how it moves forward. Because we're taking a large chunk. Ourselves and City of San Marcos are making a large chunk of this. 29.7% they have, we have 29.2%. Again, I don't see the urgency. Another meeting is not going to hurt anybody. I'd ask, and I've asked many times, that when we start projects, that all the entities be involved and make these discussions so we can move together. Ultimately, you're going to come to us and ask us for bonds. And if we're having heartache right now, and we move forward together, we don't move forward at all. All I'm saying right now, we're not ready to move forward. A delay in 1 month is not going to cause heartbreak. It's not going to cause the system to fail. It's not going to cause any more than what's happening right now. We should be concentrating our efforts on the PAW system, why it's not working when we paid for a product that is not delivering what it said it was supposed to deliver. That's my concern.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on the Hayes Caldwell group want to speak?
You want to say?
I'd like some kind of clarification on the costs. I've heard issues from $27 million for the project that doesn't involve the cartridges. And then I think John mentioned a price between 800,000 and 1.2 million. And then I hear $10 to $12 million. So these costs seem to be highly variable. Pretty soon we're going to be talking real money here. And so I have a real concern about that. With the drought that's in progress right now, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place as far as the PAW filters. I've toured the little plant there and looked at it. It seems to be a nice setup. But if it's not making the water that we need, that's something that we need to consider. But we're going to have to move forward on this issue because you have all of us at Maxwell, Martindale, County Line, and Crystal Clear all dependent on this water plant for backup water. I mean, I have a source of water ourselves, but you know, the condition of the river right now is really in precarious situation. And so we're kind of in a position here where we need as much data as we can possibly acquire to try to make this decision. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else on the Hayes Caldwell group wish to make a comment? Yes, sir.
Crystal's board is fed up, but I will. Process so far. And that nothing appears to have been resolved with the filtering system. And this would seem to be a step, at least we're spending some money to start, collect some information. And then I think as we start to get that information and or the parties get involved with what's being collected and what their positions are, we can always jump in and change whatever this document says ultimately, because it seems to be fluid to me at the moment, but I don't know how fluid it can be. But we're tired of looking at filtration systems that don't work and doing nothing but bringing a trailer in. The existing filtering system is critical at this point, as far as we understand it. And this is just a step to move forward and spend 25 grand of whatever we spend. It's not saying we're going to do this. It's not saying we're going to replace everything. It's not saying anything. It's just saying find some information and it's going to cost $25,000 to do it. That's how we look at it. Thank you.
So if I may, it is apparent that the users of this system are not in agreement on where we're going or where we want to go or what we want to do. And it's not the Board of Trustees' desire to do something that we don't have some sort of consensus. This isn't throwing things at the wall and hoping you guys like what happens. This is really a decision being made on your behalf. And that's why we're sitting here belaboring the point. And Humberto, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Here's the challenge. This user and that user and that user and this user have to get together and decide what you want to do. Because what happens is if we start making decisions for you, someone's going to like them, someone's going to be at, it doesn't matter, and someone's going to hate them. And we're going to be right back where we are with all these other challenges where we don't have a consensus on how to move forward. Without a consensus, we have a problem here. And all we're trying to do is make sure that you have an avenue to move forward. That's all we're trying to do.
So I made the motion and I'm just that guy down the road in Lavernia. I get that. My understanding is there's a lot of unknowns. And this is for initial design that may begin to understand some of those unknowns. That is why I made the motion. Am I just crazy?
Mr. Poor, Mayor, whichever you'd like me to.
You
made
can
a
call me
motion.
whatever you want, as long as you call me.
You made a motion and I have a second on the floor, and I thought it was wise to allow everybody involved to have an
Oh,
opportunity to
yeah,
speak.
no, I get it.
And to be honest with you, if the entities can't agree on the path forward, I'm not sure what to do for them. If they want to delay this by a month, we'll be happy to, we'll ask you to withdraw your motion, or they can ask you to withdraw your motion, or it can get voted down, or however you want to do this. I'm trying to follow the parliamentary procedure here so I don't get off
Yeah,
track.
I get it. So I made the motion. Mr. Forcell, who is an interested party, seconded it. There was really no comment prior to that. I heard several calls for feedback that weren't provided. Over here, it's $25,000. It moves us forward with finding out something. So I get that everybody's apprehensive about, up to 27 million. I am too. But we don't know what we don't know right now. That's my point. That's why I made the motion, for all of those you keeping score at home.
Actually, there's no one keeping score at home today, so it's just us. However, we're back to where we were. So I have a motion on the floor and I have a second. And at some point in time, I'm going to have to call this and ask for a vote. Does anybody from the Hayes Caldwell Treatment Plant Group want to say anything more before we go for a vote? Yes, ma'am. That's why we're here.
The brain is not working according to what Umberto said. It's not doing the job. And we're paying $480,000 a year.
That's a false statement. The membrane is performing quite well, and it's allowed us to get 3.6 MGD out of the plant recently. Early on, we had programming problems with the SCADA system and some of the other programming issues with it, and some equipment and valves, but the membranes themselves are performing quite well. David, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, the trailer is working. We haven't had any issues out of it for the last few weeks. So the water quality determines how much this trailer will produce. So if you had clean filtered water coming into it, it will produce 2 million gallons a day. Right off the bat, when we did the analysis of the water back in January during the winter, when we didn't have all the algae, we had good flows in the river, they estimated somewhere between 1.7, 1.8. The quality of the water coming down the river right now is terrible. And so that is affecting production out of the trailer. One other thing that is involved in this, to meet productions, we cannot run one of the old Coke filters and this Paul trailer. We can't keep up. We're producing more than what the plant was designed for, so we have to run 2 Coke filters. In doing that, we have figured out that these Coke filters, if we turn them down too much, they are not working. We're having all kinds of problems. So we've actually turned them up a little bit more to even out. So we're making up. We have the Paul unit running first, but we're actually supplementing the Coke system with the Paul unit. So we could get a little bit more out of it, but with current water conditions, it looks like about 1.2 a day is about the best that we could get out of it. One of the other things that factors into this trailer has to have so much positive pressure coming into it. The ground storage tank for our raw water, we have to keep it topped off and full to be able to get up to that 1.2 million a day. And in doing that, we're having to pump the St. Marcos River permits more than what we normally would. which affects our raw water permits out of the river. So that's affecting, and to do that extra pumping, we're having to run a diesel generator to produce that water. That cost us about 500 gallons of diesel in about a 48 to 52 hour period, just so you know that. So that's one reason why it's turned down some now too. We did have lots of problems in the very beginning with this trailer. We had valve issues, we had sensor issues, we had programming issues. But the filter trailer itself actually works. We haven't had an issue with the filters. I don't know if you have any other questions, ask me.
Here, the report that I'm reading that was submitted by Mr. Kaufman states that total raw water production is currently 2.9 million gallons per day, but the Paul trailer is only producing 1 to 1.2 million gallons per day.
So I will tell you that the numbers are probably not correct, and that's not his fault.
They put them in the
Hang on,
report.
that's not his fault. I've been off last week when this report was made. So he didn't get the information. So information on our SCADA system is not totaling the Coke system and the Paul. We have to manually do that at this point right now. So he's looking at a different number. He didn't add two numbers together that he needed.
Let me explain. In the report that you have from us that's written is the average from the last month over 30 days. What David is talking about is what's been occurring over the last week or two.
I'm just curious. We've had comments made that it doesn't work, that it does work. Who's right?
I'd like to know that.
Well, and I would say that,
We're getting a little far afield of the agenda item, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we need to answer the questions presented by the trustees, but we need to stay with the noticed agenda.
All right, so wrapping back around here, if we can, thank you, Brandon. Is this still on? We have a motion on the floor. I have a second. We've asked for comment and we've had substantial comments from Maxwell, from Martindale, from Crystal Clear, and from County Line, which is currently the 4 users of that plant.
I have a question. Is the trailer not a temporary solution?
Yes,
And is the initial design in spending that $25,000 not a move towards a permanent solution?
I would say that's yes as well.
Okay, that was my understanding. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there,
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, we can go ahead and call the order. I said call the order. I want to call the question, yeah.
Basically, we've got the question called. All those in favor of Resolution 2308-048, approval of an engineering service order with Ardora for initial design services pertaining to the Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Nanofiltration Improvement Project at a cost not to exceed $25,000, as well as there being a reimbursement resolution at some point in time in the future to put that money back into CRWA when a project moves forward and it is funded by some sort of other mechanism. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, nay, sorry.
All right, we'll start over here with Donald Boswell. Yes or no?
Bosworth, it's aye.
Don Bosworth, aye.
I had a quick question, I'm sorry. When is the next meeting? The next meeting for the board?
A month from now.
No, so I say no.
Are we recording this as we're going around? We have one aye, one nay.
Nay.
Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Purcell, aye. Ms. Vaughn? Start down the other end, Clint Ellis.
Hey. Hey.
Aye.
Hey.
Hey,
Nay.
Thank you very much. The nays have it by a wide margin.
he didn't.
Stephen, I apologize.
Did you get,
It didn't affect the outcome.
why that-
Okay.
Fran, did you get the tabulation?
Did you catch mine as a no as well? Can you give us a total on that, please, ma'am? Yes? Thank you. That's a full quorum of 18. We have 14 nays, 4 ayes. Motion is defeated. Thank you very much for making the motion, sir.
Sure. Happy to help.
It's the only way to get to the end is if we keep moving forward, right?
Yeah, I would just ask the staff to get together with these.
I think that's an excellent idea. Brandon's got a great point. I think what we need to do is we need the 4 entities to sit down with staff and kind of work this out so we know where we're going. Please, and I mean, please.
Yes.
I mean, in a spirit of cooperation, we've got to come up with a resolution and y'all are driving the bus here to be, I mean, that's how it is, right, Doris? I mean, if I make a motion to change something you're doing, you're not going to be happy about that. Okay, we're going to move on to item E. CRWA 2308049, adopt a resolution. Well, you move it when I'm reading it. 2308049, approval of an engineering service order with Ardura Group and to provide grant application services in support of the Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant Improvement Project at a cost not to exceed $46,186. This was covered earlier in the report given by the construction committee in reference to why this is being moved forward. Go ahead.
Not in my construction committee meeting, in an answer to Mr. Forcell's question.
Anybody have any comments in reference to this? Everybody know what TDM is? Anybody not know what TDM is? People with the checkbook, Texas Department of Emergency Management. They give out all the grants.
People that are responsible by state law for being a member and being involved.
Any conversation on this whatsoever?
I make the same exact comments I made on the last 2 items. There's a group here that's affected directly by this. I'd like to hear their comments on the matter.
Very much. I'm going to look first over here at Maxwell. Do you have any comments in reference to this, Doris or Ms. Vaughn? No comments? Mr. Forcell, any comments? Stephen, any comments? Yes, sir. Thank you. How about we start working our way around this way? Mr. Bosworth, anything from you?
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Snouts, Ms. Shield.
I just have a question. Okay, so how many people did we get proposals from? Did we send this out for bid or?
This was only Ardura. Ardura had submitted the original application, and I apologize, I can't tell you when it was in 22. It was sometime late 2022. It was sent in. We thought we'd have the results by January. They're still evaluating the generator project, so they're not even considering yours at this point. TDM met with staff here and Ardura and said, you really should piece this thing out in a multiple packets for a better chance to actually get some of this funding. And I apologize if someone can tell me the number. It was a significant amount if you were fully funded for it. I think it was maybe 5 to 7 million. Byron, would you have the answer to that question?
9 million. It was a grant for $9 million.
And Ardura has the expertise to.
Yes,
write
ma'am.
This grant.
Yes, ma'am, they do.
Patient. Okay, that's my question. Just sure that.
I've gone to the 4 agencies that are directly impacted by this. Anybody else have any comments or questions? If not, I am willing to call for a motion. I have a motion by Ms. Vaughn. Anybody want to second this? I'm sorry, that was. Thank you, Mr. Font. Thank you, Stephen. I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, we got that one. That was unanimous. That's way better. Item 10. It's going to be broken into 2 parts. Executive session. Board of Trustees will meet in closed session, discuss the following items pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including where appropriate, sections 551, 071, 551, 072, 551, 074, 076, 086, 089, and 418, 183 F of the Texas Government Code. Meet and consult with attorney in private is permitted by section 551, 071, 1 of the Texas Government Code to seek advice upon and discuss the status of contemplated litigation claims and controversies related to status of the claim asserted against Tri-Hydro Corporation related to the engineering design services for the Wales Ranch Phase 2 generator installation project. Notice from Shannon Monk concerning allegations of wrongful retention of retainage allegedly due to Lofton Equipment Company under procurement contract for Wells Ranch Phase 2 generator installation project, and Shannon Monk Inc. pay applications 12 and 13 submitted in connection with the construction contract for the Wells Ranch Phase 2 generator installation project. It is now 7:29 p.m. We're going to enter into executive session. We'll come into executive session in 5 minutes. We'll give everybody a quick 5-minute break. All those not directly invited into this meeting will need to vacate the room. Welcome back, everybody. We're coming in from executive session, and the agenda's not up there, so I got nothing to read. Bring that over here, please. Wait a minute. There you go. I'm good. Return to open meeting. Board may consider, deliberate, and take action on items discussed in executive session. And to do that, I'm going to ask you if there are any actions to be taken from item 10A.
I have a motion to make.
Mr. Poor?
This is regarding item 10A, the first bullet point. I'd like to make a motion that we require Tri-Hydro to come to the table and agree to mediation by August 24th. And that subsequently that we begin mediation proceedings by October 15th. And if there's a failure to meet those dates, that we defer to council on moving forward with an actual lawsuit.
Second. I have a motion clearly described in a second. Roll call, are we okay with consent?
Let's see how it turns out. If it's obvious.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Roll call. Covered that, right? All right. Are there any other motions in reference to item 10A?
On item 10A for Shannon Monk's pay release, I make a motion to release it. Holding back the $19,800 items staff. Shannon Monk on for documentation.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor and a second by Mr. Gibbs. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Unanimous vote. Are any other motions on item 10A? Hearing none, we'll go to item 10B. Are there any motions in reference to item 10B?
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to direct the general manager to seek funding in the 2024 budget for an assistant general manager position.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, that's a unanimous vote. You're now on item 12, future board member agenda items. Again, as we've said multiple times, you do not need to have them tonight. You can always send them in to the general manager. We ask that anything that you're asking to be placed on the agenda, please have one of the other trustee members second that motion when you send it in. That is, the bylaws require 2 people to put something on the agenda. And we're going to follow the bylaws just like they're written. So if you want something on the agenda, please have a second person that basically concurs with your recommendation, and then we'll put it on the agenda. Are there any future agenda items to be discussed tonight?
Like for us to check in.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you completely. I will second your motion.
Thank you.
Don't even have to worry about that. Please put on the next agenda about basically going out for auditor services. Anything else needs to be on next agenda? We do. Hire professional services. Hearing no other new memberage items, I will.
Motion to adjourn.
That does not require a vote. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. It is 9.